This is my open assignment. I will be doing an analysis on the film The Invention of Lying. Before I get started, I do want to let everybody know that this is analysis. This isn't a review. There will be spoilers, so if you haven't seen the film and you don't want to be spoiled, please stop here, go watch the film. It's available on Netflix, and then come back here and we'll have a lovely discussion. So, The Invention of Lying is a 2009 film starring Ricky Gervais. I think that's how you pronounce his name. I'm not very sure. But, everybody knows who Ricky Gervais is. He's very controversial. He's always making some comments in, award shows that other celebrities aren't too fond of. So, back to the film. This film is set in a fictional universe where no one can lie. And the lying is just not known in their society. They have to tell the truth, no matter how cruel. And the story centers around Ricky Gervais's character, Mark Bellison. He's considered a loser in their society. Personally, I think this is a little bit cruel, and I think they kind of treat him a little bit harshly. I just think he's just a regular not old, he's middle-aged, I don't know, but he's just a regular guy, in my opinion. But, he's seen as a loser, he's down on his luck. This is played out as funny because people see him as a loser. That part wasn't really funny to me. But he's bad at his job. He can't really find a good girl to settle down with. All that heteronormativity and all that stuff. And he just has a bland personality, and nobody really likes him until he discovers that he has an ability that no one else can do, which is he can lie. Like I said, no one else in this world has this ability, and they don't have the concept of lying in their society. Nobody ever lies. So, no one but him can understand the concept of saying something that isn't factual. So this new ability allows him to thrive in his society. He starts out as a loser, but then one day he's just like, hey, I'm gonna lie. And, he gets large sums of money. He gets the girl to hang out with him, and in the end he gets the girl. And, he gets rehired. He becomes this popular man in his workplace. He's a star. He becomes this total cool guy. I don't know. But no matter how ridiculous his stories are, everybody believes him. He gets away with it because there is no lying in this society. One funny example, he tells his friend, he's trying to explain to his friends the concept of lying. And he's like, my real name is, and he gives them a fake name. And they just believe him because they don't understand. No one is able to understand. They even avoid using the word and words similar to lying all throughout the film. And it isn't until the end, before the closing credits, that Gervais's character, through narration, calls it lying. And they finally address that what was going on was the invention of lying, hence the movie title. By the end, no one else really knows the concept of lying, except for his kid. Spoiler, he has a kid at the end. And they're the only ones who are able to lie, and everybody else doesn't. They just don't understand lying. And sorry that it's my computer's shaking, so sorry about that. So lying brings him into power. He lies to the bank and he tells them he has more money than he actually does, and he gets the money because, obviously there's no lying, so he's telling the truth. So he gets his job back, he gets the girl, all these things happen to him, and he puts, and this puts him at the top of his society's food chain. He becomes this powerful man, and no one can tell him, no one can call him out for his lying because they don't have a concept for it. Because this story is written from the perspective of an atheist, it was written by and directed by Ricky Gervais and Matthew Robinson. And so because of this, there is no lying. Lying means there being no lying means there is no religion in their society. So ultimately, the protagonist is the one that creates religion. He does this when he consoles his dying mother towards, the beginning or middle of the story. Who his mother in her dying breath starts to panic because she's like, I don't want to just not exist. And she gets scared because she basically says, I don't want to be nothing. And to console her, Gervase's character creates a lie or an afterlife and he tells his mother that she'll be able to live in a mansion and see her deceased husband again. She'll have all these things, that there is an afterlife. She doesn't have to worry. And this lie soothes his mother, and she dies peacefully instead of in a panic. And because there is no lying, the doctors and nurses that are also gathered around in the hospital bed or room, they all encourage him to continue because the lie that he's speaking of isn't a lie to them. They perceive it as the truth, and they see it as factual information about the afterlife, something that wasn't known before. So to them, Gervase's character is some sort of prophet, and I would argue something like the prophet of Muhammad, or even Joseph Smith, maybe a little bit closer to Joseph Smith. I don't really know the prophet Muhammad's story a lot. I kind of do, but this is a satire of religion. This satire of religion really puts it into perspective of how, as humans, we are so desperate for answers, for the meaning of life, that we'll believe anything someone tells us because, our desire for something else in the world, like what are we living for? Like, why are we here? We want that answer so much. And it just makes me wonder how life was like, during Jesus's time in Jerusalem. I think it was Jerusalem. And just like how people in everyday society was, how people perceived Jesus back then. Was it like in this comical way, or did they really see him as, the second coming? I think, on the side note, another movie, sorry for the shaking, another movie you should watch is Monty Python's Life of Brian, which does give the perspective of how people perceive religion during Jesus' time. So that's also a satire. It's also available on Netflix. So go watch that if you want to see that perspective. I like to think that we as humans are a little smarter than, what's portrayed than the humans portrayed in the Invention of Lying and in the life of Brian. But what basically happened then is what's happening in the film. But the only difference is we have a holy text to back it up. Christianity, Christianity has a holy text to back up, their claims on Jesus and religion. But all Gervase's character has are just written words on a pizza box. But back to the movie. So Gervase's character thinks nothing of, afterlife and creation. That was just a lie he told to his mother to help soothe her during while she was dying. And then he goes back to his apartment the next day, and basically the whole world is in his front lawn wanting answers. And his friends, who again do not understand the concept of lying, encourage him to tell the whole world what he knows. So he creates a list of rules for people to follow, similar to the 10 Commandments. It's like don't be a bad person. But one of the rules is that the person gets 3 strikes before getting sent to the bad place. And then, like baseball, that's how the people, the humans, the society perceives his new rules. They see it as baseball. And another example is everyone gets a mansion when getting into the good place, And also, side note, go watch The Good Place. It's also on Netflix. But if a person wants to live in someone else's mansion, their mansion will go back on the market. There's unlimited ice cream with unlimited flavors. Just all these comical things that are very similar to what we as Christians view God's or Yahweh's rules for us to live. But the most important thing he tells the world is there is a man in the sky who controls all the good and the bad things happen. And this is a very comical scene. If there's a video on YouTube, if you haven't seen the film but you would like to see that, I'm sure there's a video on YouTube that you can just go and look up, because it's funny and it's very satirical of what us Christians perceive Yahweh and how we perceive Yahweh and all that. So despite being a story about a world without lying and religion, they somehow still have Christian influences, which I think that is very interesting. And it's just like coming from a world with lying and with religion, like of course we're going to have an influence. And there is even a part towards the end where Gervase's character is, he's unshaven and wearing a white sheet around his body, and he looks very similar to Jesus, or what we might perceive as Yahweh. We see little bits of Christian influence all throughout the movie. At the very end of the movie, there's like a church, but they don't call it a church, and basically the sign out front is like a place to think about the man in the sky. So basically, Gervase's character created Yahweh, but they don't call this character they don't call Yahweh, they call this the man in the sky, basically. So that's very interesting. And what this film makes me wonder about is how this movie might be told from a different perspective. I'm Christian, or I'm not Christian, but I come from a Christian background. I was raised Catholic. So Catholicism and Christian is just so ingrained in my brain, and interestingly, it's ingrained in our society, because of westernization, But what would this film be like if it were made in a non-Christian valued society? Like, what would this film be? How would this film be told through the perspective of like Islam culture, or maybe even Hinduism, or Sikhism, or anything of that sort that didn't really necessarily relate to Yahweh, or like the three main religions, maybe even. But I don't think if a film like that were made, I don't think it would be as popular in America, because we're a Christian culture, and Christianity is so ingrained in our society, and it would just be hard for us to relate to something outside of the Christian faith. But I think it would still be very interesting to see. We watched the movie PK in this class, which I felt while watching The Invention of Lying, I felt that it was very much the opposite of this film, The Invention of Lying. For PK, it's an alien coming onto foreign grounds and having to adapt to all of society's rules and values, compared to this film, where there's this human, a down on his luck loser, because I don't really perceive him as a loser. He's just down on his luck, really. But he's refusing to settle for their rules, his society's rules, and instead he decides to make his own rules and his own values, and more importantly, he forces the people around him to conform to him instead of him conforming to them. So they're kind of opposite of each other. So PK, here's the guy who has to conform, and for The Invention of Lying, he's making society conform to him. So I found that very interesting. So if you haven't seen the film, you've been spoiled already, so sorry for that. But if you haven't seen the film, I definitely recommend you watch it. It's a fun watch. It's simple, and it's lighthearted. I don't think it's too complicated. They don't go delve too into religion and all that stuff. It's just meant for a good laugh. It's a great analysis on religion and on atheism, in my opinion, so I would definitely recommend it. Yeah, so that's my open assignment. Thank you for taking the time to watch this, and have a great day.